There's a former U.S. four-star general, General Wes Clark, who was a former NATO commander. So he was the former Supreme Allied Commander for NATO, someone of that caliber. Now, you've been hearing this, and I've talked about it several times, especially in recent weeks, because the phrase keeps getting used by the likes of Mark Rutte or Keir Starmer and other Emmanuel Macron. They keep saying a just and lasting peace. That's what they want. Now, remember, prior to 7-8 months ago, they were always talking about winning. They were talking about reestablishing the 1991 borders or maybe the 2022 borders, et cetera. But then they changed. They said, all right, well, okay, a negotiated settlement from a position of strength with leading to a just and lasting peace. But no one ever defined it. Well, recently, General Wes Clark was asked that very question, and he did define it.
To you, General, what is a just end of the war in Ukraine? What is a just and long-lasting peace? Everyone says that, like from every corner I hear that. But to you, sir, what will it be like?
It would be the withdrawal of Russian forces from Donbass and Crimea. You'll give them a naval base at Sevastopol. They'll return all the children who've been abducted, account for all the people that have been injured or missing. They'll pay reparations, and they'll also turn over to the International Criminal Court those people who have been charged with international war crimes.
Which is unlikely to happen, isn't it?
It's not likely to happen, and it's a very sad thing because for 80 years we've tried to build an international environment in which the rule of law, territorial integrity, human rights are respected.
I added that last part. I thought about cutting that clip off after he ended his comment, but then the interviewer there, who, by the way, elsewhere in that interview, he's in Kiev. He's unequivocally pro-Ukraine. He actually said, yeah, if we get all the stuff we ask, we will 100% drive all the Russians out. He still believes that. Okay, someone in Ukraine, I mean, I can understand the incentive and the desire, even though you can see it's not going to happen. But for Wes Clark, at least the guy had the honesty to say, yeah, that's probably not likely to happen. And then I added that last part of the clip so you could see the mentality of further mentality of General Clark. And he represents a whole slew of people in the West who believe those kinds of things. That, yes, a just and lasting peace that we keep talking about means, for reasons never explained why they would do it, that Russia will just withdraw from all of the territory that it has seized, that it will forget about all of its war aims, that it will just forget about all the Russian people that they have been fighting to protect for all these years, and that they'll submit themselves to war crimes tribunals, none of which on the Ukraine side, of course, because they're the good guys, so they haven't done anything wrong. And then that they'll just say, I'll pay reparations. Yeah, we'll just go ahead and pay for everything that had happened here. I mean, even in a Harry Potter type world, even in a Hollywood script, no one's going to write something like that because that is so stupid and so far detached from reality that even a Hollywood script would say no one would come see that movie because it is way beyond even the theoretical movie script kind of a deal. That'll never happen. So that movie wouldn't make money because no one would come see it. And yet you see that he has it. And then he adds on at the end that we've been trying for 80 years to build this rules-based order. Well, let's make sure that everyone is clear on what he's talking about. What he says is that we like the way the world was in 1991, 1992, when the Soviet Union disintegrated, when the Warsaw Pact disintegrated, and we won the Cold War. And so at that moment, Russia was a shambles and would be until like the mid-2000s, really. So for about a decade and a half, Russia was absolutely decrepit. Militarily, they were a shell of the old former Soviet Union, and literally they had rusting tanks. They couldn't even get them out of the warehouses to do field exercises. Their ships were literally rotting in their bays. They weren't a threat to anyone other than their nuclear weapons, which obviously are always on the ready. But conventionally, they were nothing. Their troops themselves were awful. And demoralized, et cetera. They had no leadership, anything, all this kind of stuff. That's the world that he wants to still exist. So he wants it to where the West, who was unequivocally at a position of dominant power, would just tell everybody, all right, here's what you're going to do. Here's what you're going to do, China. Here's what you're going to do, Russia. Here's what you're going to do, Middle East. And anyone who stands in our way, we'll just put them under our thumb. We'll squeeze it, and maybe fire a few missiles here and there, threaten them, talk mean, and then they'll do what we want. And that's how it was for a long time. That's why these first number of rounds of NATO expansion moving to the east, Russia was complaining about it, but they had no power to do anything else. That's what Wes Clark means when he says we've been trying for this rules-based order. Notice he didn't say legal, law-based order. He said rules-based order. That's a distinction is important because they write the rules, not laws, but rules. We want a rules-based order where we get to set the rules and everyone else has to simply comply. And he doesn't like it to when reality goes in to where now China is definitely no longer a vassal state in a weak power, economically or otherwise. Russia is definitely not. We have made them stronger than they were before. So whereas it was the power dynamic was definitely in the US/European side, now that's not the case. Now we have made it so and given them incentive to build up this force because we keep helping the Ukraine side kill Russians every day. And this war continues on because without it, the war would have ended years ago. So now Russia is in a point to where they're going to say, okay, new rules now. Now then we're going to be talking about some of this stuff. We're going to be the ones that are going to be setting the stage here. Now, all these European people I've told you seem to be devoid of any kind of ability or willingness to see reality. But President Trump, on the other hand, does. Now, you just saw Zelensky say that Putin's lying about the Kursk. The situation is stable there. But funny because President Trump doesn't seem to believe that. As a matter of fact, he published this on Truth Social where he said, we've had very good and productive discussions with Vladimir Putin of Russia yesterday, and there is a very good chance that this horrible, bloody war can finally come to an end. Trump is the only one who is saying that he wants the war to come to an end. He's not talking about continuing it on. He wants it to come to an end. But at this very moment, thousands of Ukraine troops are completely surrounded by the Russian military and in a very bad and vulnerable position. I have strongly requested to President Putin that their lives be spared. President Trump also is aware of the cost to the Ukraine side. He is paying attention to that. And many clips we've shown you where he repeatedly talks about the pictures he's seen and the reports that he's shown about all these people dying on both sides, or these beautiful young people, as he keeps referring to them. But he said he asked that they would be spared, that this horrible massacre, one of the worst since World War II, doesn't happen. God bless them all. Now, overnight, Vladimir Putin responded to that.
But before we begin, I would like to say that we have familiarized ourselves with today's appeal by the President of the United States, Mr. Trump, to spare the lives of Ukrainian army servicemen, some of whom are blocked by Russian troops in the invasion zone of the armed forces of Ukraine in the Kursk region. In this regard, we draw attention to the fact that Ukrainian militants have committed numerous crimes against civilians in the invasion zone. These acts, as I have already stated, are classified by the General Prosecutor's Office of the Russian Federation as terrorism. At the same time, we understand President Trump's appeal to approach these servicemen with humanitarian considerations. In this regard, I emphasize that in the event of laying down their arms and surrendering, their lives and decent treatment will be guaranteed in accordance with international law and the laws of the Russian Federation.
So President Trump asked for something, and President Putin says, we'll give them a chance. He didn't just say we'll spare them, but he said we won't just go and kill them, because there are those in Russia, believe me, there is a strong movement in Russia of people who do want them to go and kill them all. Because in the views of Russia, and this doesn't get any coverage in the West, there have been numerous reports, videos, interviews, etc., that says that the Ukrainian service members, while they have been occupying the Russian territory, tortured and murdered many civilian people. Old people, women, children, kids, everybody. They have allegedly, there are large numbers of people, and it's all over the Russian news. Just like the Bucha situation animated the Ukraine side in the first few months of the war and is always cited as Russian war crimes, On the Russian side, they say they have uncovered all of these Ukrainian war crimes on their territory. They're not in a very forgiving mood. They don't want to let these guys go. They're still on Russian territory, surrounded. Many in Russia want to kill them. President Trump has said, I'm asking you not to do that. He didn't demand it. He asked for it. Putin, I think, recognized it and says, okay, Putin is still willing to negotiate. He has not got to the point yet to where he says, all right, forget it. Everything's off the table. We're not going to talk about anything. We'll see you on the battlefield. He hadn't said that yet. And Trump is the only one standing in his way of doing that, because all of these other 37 members of this alleged coalition of the willing, all they want to talk about is being a bold, muscular military force arrayed against Russia. Not even talking about ending the war, except on these hypothetical, hyper Hollywood type conditions that Wes Clark talked about there. Trump is saying we need to get this war to an end. And so here's a confidence building measure. If Trump asks for their lives to be spared, Russia is going to give them the chance. If the Ukrainians actually comply, lay down their arms, then they'll be spared. They'll go into POW camps and whatever, although the Russians said that they will be tried according to Russian Federation, so they're not completely off the hook yet. So let's don't be fooled on that issue. Let's don't be confused on that. But the point being that Trump is trying to end the war, definitely has that as objective, and he's almost standing against this whole onslaught from the Europeans who want to push for more war.